Hello, welcome to EMS Update 2024 in Studio 51. I'm Brian Shaw, your host for the next few minutes. And our guest now is Brian Maloney, Director of Operations from Plum EMS. So welcome, Brian.
Thanks for the invite. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Looking forward to it.
A little B2B talk here,
Yeah,
Brian.
it's just like when someone says Brian, I'm looking all around.
I know,
what are they talking
it's a little
about?
BB. So what do you have going on at Plum EMS? What are some exciting things on the horizon or some things that you've been doing there?
Well, actually back in September, Plum EMS received a National Safety and EMS Award that we received during the EMS Expo down in New Orleans for our accomplishments for what I basically call the appropriate use of lights and sirens. And so it was a very proud moment. We were the only ones that got that specific award in the country. And so it was a heck of an accomplishment. I can't tell you how proud I was of the crews because it was 100% their work and effort and what they did. So, very exciting with that.
So the recipient or receiving an award is kind of the accumulation of a large project, an ongoing project. So how did it all start? What got Plum EMS thinking about the use of lights and sirens and how that affects operations?
Well, I started back with Plum EMS in 2017. And one of the things I carried over from the last places I worked is that I started doing weekly meetings. In the weekly meetings, I would just, do a general topics. We'd review a company policy, a protocol, and like an equipment review. And sometimes the protocols were something specific. Sometimes it would just be like, let's review this. And so one of the protocols I picked was actually emergency vehicle operations. I don't know if you ever read that protocol. Fine print, like
is that protocol 120?
It's a huge protocol.
Yeah.
It's like 5 pages. I mean, it's a lot. And so I was just like, well, let's go through this. And as I was reviewing the protocol, it actually had some benchmarks on the use of lights and sirens, both responding to calls and transporting patients to the hospitals. And I love those kind of benchmarks because I could use my data and compare to see how we're doing to what the state's benchmark is. And responding to calls at that time, it was saying 50% or less with lights and sirens. We are at 48. Okay, that's not an issue. But I don't know if you ever noticed what the benchmark is for the use of lights and sirens during transportation. You ever notice that?
Super small, right?
Oh, smaller than that,
Yeah.
less than 1%. And like I almost had a heart attack when I read that. I thought someone was messing with me. And I even went and looked at our numbers, and we were at 26% of the times we transported to the hospital back in 2017 with the use of lights and sirens. Now, at the time, I thought maybe our state medical director was sitting around a card table with his friends thinking about how he could mess with EMS agencies across the Commonwealth and thinking, let's go 1% for the use of lights and sirens. I'm thinking this is unachievable, this is impractical, and just absolutely ridiculous. However, I like setting goals. I like challenges. And so that was one of the things when we reviewed this protocol. That's where this all started. I started off with a conversation one week during all, because I do a weekly meeting Monday through Friday, address all the crews, and we talked about this, and we all kind of laughed about it. But then when I showed them our numbers at 26%, it was like, okay. And so that kind of started this journey in which it first started off with just general topics, listening, talking to people, making them understand the dangers of the use of lights and sirens, then to the point of, okay, well, let's start providing feedback to crews. So anytime someone used lights and sirens, I would get a report that night at midnight. So the next morning, I would take a look. And what I did was I gave them some feedback. I sent them an email saying, hey, I saw you use lights and sirens last night. And I mapped it out online. And I was like, you saved about 3 to 4 minutes. And just kind of threw that out there, something to think about. And what that ended up doing is just pretty much evolved to the point of where that continuous feedback and continuous talking about it, like the numbers started going down. And I pretty much loved it. And then from there, I even required crews to write a special report anytime they use lights and sirens. And all it was, hey, I saw you use lights and sirens. Can you kind of, in a sense, justify why? And so all of a sudden, crews understood that they were being held accountable and that they needed to be responsible for the decision that they made.
We have to be accountable in EMS?
Every now and then. Every now and then.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting, too, in the protocol, it even has recommendations, jeopardized airway, uncontrolled bleeding, and, of course, a complicated pregnancy or something, use of lights and sirens. And, of course, the impending death. But other than that, You know, if you sit there and look at the times we've used lights and sirens when transporting, you're like, man, we use them a lot.
Yeah.
And so it pretty much evolved into that, even to the point where I was started saying, tell you what, I'm going to start getting follow-ups from every patient they transport to the hospital from the receiving facility. And I know, I'm sure those pre-hospital care providers were a little annoyed with me, but every time we use them, I'm like, hey, can you provide me a follow-up? And so typically within 24 hours from the time you use lights and sirens, I give a follow-up. And we started critiquing your report as well and your care to find out, did you do everything you possibly could before you elected to use that intervention, the emergent intervention of lights and sirens? And it was never, you were wrong for what you did, because I was never in this seat. I can't tell you you were wrong. If you made that choice, you made it for whatever reason. But we're able to sit back and take a look. So say you had a shortness of breath, okay? How long did it take to do the non-rebreather mask versus then CPAP? And did they require assisted ventilations with a BVM? If all of a sudden it took you 10 minutes to put them on a non-rebreather mask when you got them in the back of the truck, and then you sat there and thought, well, you need a CPAP, and it's just, no, we need to be more aggressive with our treatment. That is what makes a difference in that patient's outcome, not saving those 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And so that, honestly, was huge. And so the next thing that really helped Brian with all of this is, I think it was back in 2022, we joined a national collaboration. It was a Lights and Sirens collaboration, and it was all about the appropriate, or the way they like to put it, is increasing the safety of EMS by decreasing the use of lights and sirens, not eliminating them. And so basically with this, what ends up happening is that, you know, it was Plum EMS and 49 other agencies from across the country focused on lowering this, the use of lights and sirens, but working together, sharing information, sharing stories, sharing experiences. And so let me tell you, the goal for this, the use of lights and sirens in transport in the hospital, 5%, less than 5%. And at that time we were at 7. I'm thinking, we got this. And so, but the goal for the use of lights and sirens for response was less than 30%. And I'm thinking, ooh, we're at 48%.
Yeah. How do you get there? That's 18%.
And that's why I thought, once again, this is going to be a joke. I'm going to get laughed out of the crew room when I try to bring this up. But because of the fact we have spent almost a year and a half talking about using lights and sirens safely, that helped us out tremendously. And so it wasn't like it was a culture shock right off the bat, because this was something we had been talking about. And so when we ended up, you know, talking about this, one of the things that was also incredibly beneficial, there's a joint statement. Dr. Kupis was one of the big leads on this, talking about lights and sirens and the dangers. And did you know, by the use of lights and sirens while responding to a call, you increase your likelihood in an emergency vehicle by 50%? And when you transport to the hospital, it's triple, 300%.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And that's something, you know, we look at the inherent dangers of EMS, and we take that oath to provide. You know, they talked about the oath this morning of to provide care and do no harm. But unfortunately, we know from our experience that the EMS providers, unfortunately, we've caused some harm once in a while. And so, you know, our accolades are off to you, Brian, and especially your staff at Plum EMS.
They went above and beyond, Brian.
It's not a one-man show out there, right?
Nope.
It takes the entire community of Plum EMS to make this happen.
Yeah, and they went above and beyond. And right now, they're at the use of lights and sirens while responding to calls less than 5% of the time. And we have not jeopardized our response times. If anything, comparing the times before and after, a 30 to 60 seconds difference is it.
And we can make up those 30 to 60 seconds in a lot of different ways.
Yep. Well, and that's what they do. We have a 60-second shoot time goal. From the time those tones drop to the time pulling the truck out of the garage, 60 seconds or less. That's what makes a difference in our response time. Not driving reckless or driving fast. I'll never ask them to do it. And Brian, one of the best ways I really thought I got that message relayed was, if I ever got into a wreck on the way to a call and I hurt someone or worse, killed somebody, I'm done in EMS. Yeah. I would never be able to step foot in an emergency vehicle again.
So Brian, if anybody wants more information on the Plum EMS program and how you implement this, how can they get in touch with you?
They can shoot me an email. That's operations@plumems.com. That's operation with an S at the end of it, at plumems.com.
Once again, Brian, thanks for this time. little bit of B2B talk here as we're wrapping up the Friday edition of Studio 51 at EMS Update. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to spend with us. Look for more from EMS Update for tomorrow, our last day of 2024.